Signs of the Southland, 12th February 2024. Gentlemen, Georgia Tech Yellow Jacket has won another Super Bowl. Harrison Butker in his fourth Super Bowl appearance, the most of any Georgia Tech athlete, has won his third with the Kansas City Chiefs. Let's read out some records that he set while doing so, shall we? Second most points of all time of any individual player in Super Bowl history behind Jerry Rice. Rice is at 48, Butker is at 37. The longest ever field goal in a Super Bowl at 57 yards, which he took off San Francisco's Jake Moody of Michigan as well. That record of 55 was set maybe 4 minutes prior. Game
Not
time
many
wise,
minutes. It's very quickly, very
not
quickly.
at all. Not at all. Butker also has the most field goals of any kicker in Super Bowl history all time at 9. He's tied for the most field goals in a single Super Bowl at 4. He is Georgia Tech's first three-time Super Bowl champion. He's now passed Bill Curry and Shaq Moore on the all-time list. Jack, in our document here, you have Harrison Butker has to be in the top tier of NFL players from Tech now. Care to deliberate? Care to elaborate?
I feel like winning matters and contributing to winning matters. When you measure best ofs, I'm not going to deep dive this right now, but just in general, you can't not have this discussion and not mention the fact that he has directly contributed a lot to championship winning teams in championship games in particular, which it's just one of the categories. There's of course many other categories, and he's a kicker, which is its own caveat in the middle of all this. But uh, for a kicker, if you're, I mean, this is the dream situation. I think. I mean, it's what Vinatieri did for ages. It's what Gostkowski did. Like he's up in the NFL. Certainly, he's already up there in all-time kickers. So yeah, it's just I don't know if he'll ever actually be the number one. He will never be the number one Tech player out of Tech just because Megatron exists. But he at least needs to be recognized whenever the conversation happens now, I think.
And I think that's an important distinction to make is top tier of NFL players from Tech, as we kind of went into on our Mount Rushmore episode, which is pretty good content. You all should go check it out. But that's not really the same as Mount Rushmore of people based on their contributions at Tech. Of course,
Right.
great contributions while at Tech.
Yeah, he's still our leading kicker, I believe, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know Tech hasn't made a 50 or more yard field goal since he left. But again,
Bird did that. Aiden Bird had at least one.
Really?
I think he had one.
He's had attempts from 50, but I would be shocked if we went back and checked that he's made.
Okay.
I was going to say that was in our very own Slack. I was going to say our football guys are usually pretty good about that.
Notoriously bad from anything beyond 40 yards. Once you start getting past 50 yards, you're talking about worse than a coin flip success rate. So keep that in mind.
He got a 48 yarder. That was the high.
Yeah.
Good for him.
Crazy there. But anyways.
Good for him. Today, in today's episode, we'll also have Charles Gilley here to talk baseball with us and preview the opening weekend for this season. But let's start with talking about the men's and women's basketball teams, shall we, gentlemen? Women's basketball first up, 2 losses on the week by a total of 5 points, by 3 to number 23 Syracuse, and by 2 to, I believe, previous Final Four combatant Miami. The second one is, of course, the Tasha Tuff or the Think Pink game, former defense coordinator, assistant coach Tasha Butts, who passed away recently, was recognized at the game, and her family got an honorary jersey for the game as in a small ceremony as well, which is super nice to see. Jack, you're our foremost women's basketball correspondent, as you were at, I think both, or you at least the Miami one.
Yeah.
I'm going to give you a challenge here. Give me the 5-word summary on both of these games.
Oh my goodness.
5 words.
Man, dang it. Oh man, dang it.
That's fair. Oh
again.
man, dang it. No, there it is. That's five. Oh man, dang it. Dang it again. There we go.
Yep. Um,
Explain. Elaborate a little
yeah,
bit more.
yeah. So funny enough, we played the number 23 team of the country three times this year. It's like a football only played the number 17 team if they didn't play a ranked team that wasn't Georgia. Uh, so I mean, the Syracuse game was on the road. We've mentioned before, like it's been a surprisingly good team for them. Like they were not that relevant recently, and now they're up here making moves in the ACC and on the national stage. And we nearly had that game. We were absolutely in it and just could not finish down the stretch. And then same thing against Miami. We had second half leads, couldn't finish down the stretch. Um, they did this team. I said it against about I said it about teams games in the past, but this team just does not know how to finish games. They don't have the what the Chiefs have in that they find ways to win games. The
Good segue.
Tech women's basketball does not really have that trait in them right now. At least they were winning in the fourth quarter. Like they absolutely had a shot to beat Syracuse. But just and they should have lost by more, but Syracuse missed some key free throws that gave us at least one chance to to at least tie it, but we could not. And then against Miami, we had a lead. We had a 9 point lead in the third quarter, and then floundered that. We came back within two in the fourth, but never really made a dent. I wrote a long piece today that was half a recap of that Miami game, half a what the hell is going on piece. Um, it we turned the ball. Most of our a third of our turnovers come from Tony Morgan, which I think is just a product of she's high usage, which is fine. But we don't really have a center that can play defense right now. They do some defensive rating stuff in the stat broadcast things per game, so I don't know what it is on the season average as a whole. But Aisha Arana and Ari Termes both pretty generally do not have good defensive ratings within single games, and it keeps happening. And that means Caleb Blackshear, who is much more of a power forward, is having to kind of play center in some morphed way, which is not ideal. They need to they're just completely missing a position on the floor and don't have enough to compensate for that. So that's a problem. But even then, like we need some killer instinct. We just don't have it right now. We've had games where we've barely lost, but we haven't really had games where like the games we have barely won were against bad teams too, which I don't
Yeah.
like.
Yeah.
So when we lose, losing just barely to a ranked team, I guess is kind of progress because we were losing by a lot to ranked teams, but then we've also lost by gazillions to ranked teams. So we're finding a way to lose basically in those games. Um, the only positive I have right now, which is not the only, but the main one is we have 5 games left, and only one of them is against a team that's in the top 8 of the ACC. The rest are either Miami again, who is 9, we're 10, and then the rest are below. So I really need us to win 3 of these games just for my own sanity to feel like we've made progress. Because if we slip up here at the end, it will not feel like progress from last year. I hopefully the recruits next year are going to be good, but in a league of guards where freshman guards have done surprisingly well and kind of run this conference for the last few years, we haven't had those people to do that. So, yeah, it's too late in the season to make any massive change, but there's still some room for a positive down the stretch.
I would like to get in a word edgewise before we move on. I think it's pretty clear that this team is very consistent in the way that we've kind of identified the deficiencies. I hate harping on that. Jack, is that a fair place to frame what I'm about to say? That
Yeah,
we've seen a lot of the same themes,
Yep.
and it's not really productive for me to be like, oh my gosh, this thing that we already talked about. Here's me rambling about it again. Is that a fair framing for what I'm about to say?
Sure.
All right, cool. I think at the end of the day, there are clear and obvious steps towards improvement, which involve, whether that's just having people that can close out, having people that are, I don't know, clutch is not a statistic, Akshay, as you well are one to say, but somebody who can just get a bucket and break a streak. It's a team that we've seen go quiet for so long, and it feels like that's bigger than just like a coaching or talent ID thing. Yes, playing without a true 5 is not awesome. Also, without a non-true, scoring threat 1, I feel like is a fair way to describe some of the season two. But the four guard lineup is just not uh, it's not setting them up for success in the
No.
ACC this year as much as I think. At least maybe with some of the rose-colored glasses at the beginning of the year, it was like, oh yeah, like Tony's talented. We're excited about Sidney Johnson, Inez Naguero, Kara Dunn, Augustinate. Like there was a lot that you could, or Caleb Blackshear too, that you could kind of
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, like there's these positives. But I really feel like the sum of the ways in which this team just is not, it doesn't feel like a complete team yet. And I think that that's something that's really showed. And I don't know whether that's a lack of growth, a lack of ID, a lack of clutch, whatever that is. There's something missing, and it's just I don't know. It feels unfair to be like, I get better, but it
Yeah.
also feels like fair to be like, this is frustrating, and it seems like it's been something that's consistently, the same issue. I
Yes.
feel like I'm talking in a big circle, trying not to be
No,
like
anything.
mean or harsh here,
Let me put some numbers to it. We were 4-14 in the conference last year. We've already got we were 0-9 on the road. This
Yeah.
year we are already at 5 ACC wins. We're 5-8 right now, and have won twice on the road. So there are actual signs, like points that show progress.
Yeah.
But when you're still losing more than you're winning in your conference, you start to feel it eventually.
Yeah. Also, this team, much like the men's team that we will talk about, the fouls just kill me, man. Like one,
Just go to the men's team. I think we're done here.
oh yeah, I was gonna say like if
Oh,
actually I don't want to take it
We'll
away
spend
from you, but
no. We'll spend even less time on the men's team because I legitimately do not want to talk about them all that much because they have put together two of the most aberrant basketball losses I think I've ever seen in my lifetime in the past week. And I don't think that that is an exaggeration. Louisville is getting nationally clowned on for how dysfunctional their program is and has been for 2 years. And they put up 20 points and a half versus Wake Forest in a half in which Wake scored 56 points.
Yeah. Yeah.
including multiple double digit Wake streaks, including one that was 13 minutes long and 20-0. The score was like 33-5, and it felt like it should have been worse. Like that's not a great place to be.
Like it's not.
Yeah.
It's just blatantly unacceptable. Like
Yeah.
it's past the point of haha funny. Let's be like kind of apathetic about it into just like Jeff Collins levels of embarrassment.
Oh no.
Like
I do
no,
want to.
that it's not that bad. Like I think there's like the program has signs of growth underlying to the that Jeff did not, but that is what you were flirting with narratively here.
Yeah.
The variance is just so much higher than what we were seeing last year for shockingly, dare I say, similar results. The highs are so much higher, and the lows are they're there too. Tech is also worthy of noting 1-2 against that Louisville team over the last 2 years combined. 2 road losses, 1 home win.
Someone sent me a stat, hold on, about specifically Louisville and Tech. And now I have to go scroll to find it. Kenny Payne at Louisville is 2-1 versus Georgia Tech and 10-43 versus literally everyone else.
Oh.
It is unacceptable for a high major, not even high major, for an ACC basketball team to be this terrible at what they are ostensibly supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
Like
this Wake
what
Forest
they
game
extensively exist for.
This Wake Forest game is like the only one that like theoretically went how it should. We should have played up. We should have put up way more points and not given up this many points. But like just a clear defeat against a team that's better than us. Like we are right now haven't beaten Notre Dame or Louisville, who on the ACC website are still listed below us in the standings technically, but we're all 3-10. But yet we beat North Carolina, put up a fight against Virginia, beat Duke, and put up a fight against North Carolina State and beat Clemson. So it's the backwards team for whatever reason. We have to play Notre Dame next, so who knows how that's gonna go.
So here's my last point on men's basketball. Wake Forest a couple of years ago was at not at this point in their downslope, but they were egregiously bad at basketball, and they made one good coaching hire. I think Steve Forbes is the guy there now, but now I've built up their program into a zone of if not respectability, of competence to upper quartile of the ACC in terms of quality. Right? Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I mean,
If
I'd say if they're not in the upper quartile of the ACC, they're knocking on the door. They're what, fifth in the conference in net? They're a top 35 team in the country based on the net ranking. Like that's a pretty not terrible place to be if you're Wake, knocking on the door for an NC2A bid.
I think that is the model that I would like this program to follow is if you're going to bottom out, well, not even, I hope this is the bottom, right? I hope this
Yeah.
is the bottom of the parabola, and that's what they are building towards. And yes, it's year one, year zero, you label it how you may, but there needs to be an upslope here. And it's just going to take some time to realize it and build out the program. But I want to be very clear in my opinion of this week in men's basketball. It is legitimately unacceptable to lose those two games in that fashion to those teams.
Yep.
Well,
I
to
mean, Wake's
Louisville.
not a
And
bad team.
no. To Louisville, it's unacceptable to lose
Yeah.
that game. To Wake, it's unacceptable to lose in that fashion, not because of the opponent.
I mean, and Louisville 25 fouls. We don't have to get into the nitty gritty. Leading by 9 late. It was about as advertised there.
Anyway, Jack, where can the people find women's basketball next?
Women will play at where do they play at Clemson on Thursday, North Carolina State, and at North Carolina State on Sunday. I don't know. Oh, the men play at Notre Dame at some point this week in Purcell.
Fun stuff. Let's move on to a much happier topic. The number 5 in the nation men's golf team, last seen in beautiful Hawaii at the Amer Intercollegiate. They finished 6th overall. The winner in that tournament was number 1 UNC. They were 18. Tech was 18 strokes behind UNC. Jake, you're usually our golf expert here. What can you give me an idea of the field of competition that was at Amer this year?
Yeah, I can give that just for some schedule clarification. This is a pretty typical invite for Georgia Tech to wind up at. In terms of the actual performance they had, I would say it's pretty good. Team wise, they were 50 under par on the week, but actually only wound up in 6th overall, 18 shots behind North Carolina, the leaders. Bode's kind of interesting for ACC play, but just to round things out in the middle, Arizona State finished 5 strokes behind UNC, Auburn 5 strokes after that. Texas Tech at minus 57, tied with Washington and Georgia Tech following up behind them. Last year, we saw Florida State, Georgia Tech, North Carolina kind of wind up in pretty similar spots, ACC prognostication wise, in the postseason play. But to see North Carolina, as far as they were in front of Tech on a team scale, I'd say that's certainly an interesting start to the year. Perhaps maybe not sustainable, but that's for the rest of the season to find out, I suppose. Tech overall, like on any given day, I mean, they shot a minus 23 to close things out in round 3, whereas North Carolina was just at a measly minus 22 on any given day. Of course, they can be up there with UNC, but whew, they came out of the gate strong and certainly kept it up. Shooting a 262 across your entire lineup, that puts you in a nice spot for perspective. Tech's, Tech's minus 23 on the day only netted them a 265. So that UNC, of course, winds up to a minus 26 on a round, which is kind of nuts.
That UNC team, the number 1 overall UNC team, you might remember from the national semifinal last year, in which Tech defeated them 3-2. So a nice little reminder, like you said, of the competition level in the ACC. Some of the other teams there and rankings with their rankings from November, because I don't think there has been another coaches poll since. Number 4, Arizona State. Number 3, Auburn. 22, Texas Tech. And 7, Washington also there. So very competitive group. I think we talked a little bit before we were recording, Jack, about Crystal Lamprecht's performance in particular, right?
Yeah. I mean, didn't play badly. He finished 14th overall. But he wasn't our top guy this time. It was Bartley Forrester, who he shot a 367s and finished 15 under par, which was eighth overall. So he was our main guy throughout the week. It was I think what we were really highlighting on for Krista was that he shot and what was it? He shot a what was it? He shot six under on Sunday, so it's not like he had a bad day. He was our best player on Sunday actually. But in general, yeah, the fact he's not our best guy, I think it's fine. When Bartley's playing as good as he was playing. Carson Kim was 3 under, Cal Fontenot was 7 under, and Hiroshi Tai was 13 under overall. So we had three guys within the top 20. But the difference between Hiroshi at 13 under and Cal Fontenot at 7 under was about 35 guys in between them, which there's your difference in terms of why we were sixth in the overall standings and on the top five. And a clear and like 7 shots back from Washington and Texas Tech, who were ahead of us. So I mean, overall, it's not. This is a lot like what the NCAA field's going to look like once we get to that point. So it's just a matter of just getting reps, I think, and just staying confident, staying the course. Hope we're playing hot at when we get down to the end. So yeah, generally pretty good, I would say. Nothing to worry about, nothing to scoff at. North Carolina's really freaking good. They can do this any given day, but we can as well. So
Yeah.
Agreed. Agreed. You'll next see men's golf at the Watersound Invitational. That'll be next Monday through next Wednesday. That's February 19th through the 21st. Let's move over to Shirley Mewborn Clements Field. Next, let's talk about the Buzz Classic. Here are your weekend results for Georgia Tech. They finished the weekend 3-3. They beat Villanova 3-2 on opening day, and then on the Friday they lost to Alabama 3-1, lost to Villanova again 5-2, lost to Alabama 5-1, and then picked up 2 wins on Sunday versus Longwood 9-1 and 10-2. Charles, you were on site for this game, for these series of games. What are your thoughts on the team to open the year? What are some of the things that you saw while you were there?
Hey, yeah. So honestly, I was, there was some good, some bad, and that's to be expected within the first 6 games of a season. Honestly, I was overall pretty impressed with the pitching. I think that's going to be like the number one concern going into this season, is how well we do in the circle. And sure, Chandler Dennis she got hit a little bit, but for the vast majority, Sophia Voiles and Kinsey Norton and Blake Nelliman, I thought pitched really well and kept us in a lot of those games. I mean, especially when you play the kind of talent like as Alabama, really, we were in those games for basically the entirety. So that was really, really good to see. Makes me hopeful for the rest of the season.
Makes sense. Jack, you were also there. Anything else you want to add there?
yeah, I think it's a good state. I think of note, Bama was 11th in the country, and Villanova usually wins the Big East. Or they're right there, and they just didn't win it last year, which is why they didn't make the tournament. But I remember Charles telling us like they were a borderline tournament team, and they certainly play pretty well at the same time. So the broadcasters saying like they play as if they expect to be playing tournament games down the stretch at the end of the season and winning their conference. So that's they're not a bad team to have here.
Out of the Big East, they may not have won the conference tournament, but a 69th overall, RPI ranking is not a terrible spot to be. It just unfortunately puts you just outside of that reach if you're not in the mix for the tournament, and the Big East, having 5 teams in the above 200s really hurts them there, to say nothing about them acquitting themselves well generally in the regular season otherwise.
Yeah. They showed some fight in that first game against Bama. We were down 3-0 going into the bottom of the 7th, but Mallory Black hit a really nice opposite field homer. Her first, I think she had two or she had a multi home run weekend. The transfer from USC Upstate, Tiffany Domingue, she had Jaden Gailey came in and had multiple pinch hits this weekend, which is really cool to see. So someone who was functionally doing the pinch hitting stuff as good as you can. And then Domingue had an absolute rocket off the bat, but went straight to the second baseman, which sucked. But then Nova, the second Villanova game was a little weird. We had Chandler started, got hit early in the first inning, and then had to come out. I guess just I was watching on TV. It just seemed like she was having a moment for also non-softball reasons. I don't know for sure. I have no idea. I didn't want to speculate. They didn't tell me anything specifically, but it was obvious she was not. It was in her best interest to not pitch the rest of that game, and so they let Blake throw. In general, I think what's most interesting about this, we finished 3-3. I think that's absolutely reasonable considering how much we didn't know about the team and knowing that probably going to lose both games to Bama, can go 1-1 against Villanova, and sure enough, we went 1-1 against Villanova and then beat Longwood. But the whole pitch, as Charles was saying, the whole pitching staff pitched. Everyone got a shakedown. I think if we played this last year, I think we mentioned this last week. Like it was a lot of Chandler, a lot of Blake, and not much else. But Kinsey threw how many innings did she? It turned into sheer or where is it? Sorry,
I got it up here.
Yeah,
Kinsey threw 7.
Kinsey threw 7. Blake threw 13 and 2/3. Sophia threw 9 and a third, and Chandler only ended up throwing 3 and 2/3, and most of that was in the first game against Villanova. But Jaden got 3 innings. Michaela Caulfield, our new lefty, got a little bit of work against Longwood. That's reassuring to me. They want to use. Eileen said they want to use the whole pitching staff, and they did that exact thing to start, which feels necessary considering who we have coming down the pipe this week too. But yeah, I think that's what sticks out to me is that and then also that Sarah Beth Allen and Ella Edgman are just only getting on base. That's very nice to see that.
It's good. It's what you need.
Why do we like these players? Because they get on base.
Yes.
Let me read out some stats. Ella Edgman's on-base percentage actually lower than I thought, 400 this weekend. Sarah Beth Allen's, though, 684. Also, Sarah Beth Allen with a 538 batting average. Ella Edgman at 368. A pretty nice, significant chunk of the team that's right over 300. Obviously, early days, low at bats, low sample size here, but pretty interesting. I think going back to what y'all said about the pitching staff, it's very Tampa Bay Raysy, right? Let's use an opener. Let's not let these pitchers go through the opposing lineup multiple times.
Yep.
Like, let's try to be a little strategic and limit the amount of damage or limit the amount of familiarity that these opposing hitters can dial in on our pitchers. And like you said, they use, let's say, 6 pitchers to cover 39 innings, right? And
that's great.
Nelliman was only in because Nelliman is only the leader on that board just because she was in versus a tougher opponent, right? So I think early on, at least to me, that pitching strategy seems sound. Like, I like it on the face. We'll sort of evaluate how this works throughout the course of the season.
Yeah, I agree. What else was I thinking?
Well, and if just to take this time here, Jen Soleo had multiple web gym-esque plays at shortstop this weekend too. She looked in mid-season form. I remember the first game against Villanova, she jumped up and caught some line drive like right above her head. And then it may have been the same game. Villanova was threatening in the 7th because they cut it to a 3-2 lead. And then she threw throughout the potential tying run at home. I mean, excellent in the field.
And I remember one of the things we noted was we needed to see her bat kind of come alive. The first ball she saw, she rocketed a 1-hopper off the wall in the opposite gap. So that was really cool to see, just her bat being a little bit more consistent. She hit 300.
She got 3 hits this weekend.
Yeah, she got 3 hits, 10 at bats. Not many total bases, sadly, but yeah, had a double, had an RBI, which is very good to see for her. And yeah, perfect from the field, 8 assists, most of anybody out there. So that was really good to see. Grayson Tucker, one of our freshmen, she ended up starting 3 of the games and appeared in 5, but she had her first career homer. She had a couple RBIs for on base is 455. It's 455, and she's only got 3 fewer at bats than Sarah Beth Allen. Granted, a lot of those were against Longwood, so not exactly your not the average opponent we will be playing this year, but in her chances to do some damage, she did some damage, which is very good to see just in terms of sheer depth, which is going to be very necessary come these next few games.
Last thing that I noticed from this weekend, looking at the box scores here, is that Tech was, I guess I don't know how to put this in context, but Tech went 5 for 5 on stolen base attempts, which I found really interesting. I don't know offhand if those were all against Longwood, or they were trying these in more optimal situation. Optimal, maybe not the right word, but more 50-50 situations, right? Versus Alabama versus Villanova. So
yeah.
I don't know if either of you have insight on those.
I know Ella stole a base against Alabama, but
there was one that happened. I'm trying to find my notes. This was against Nova, against someone. This may have been against Nova, where we had a stolen base that got reviewed, and turns out that whoever was running left before the pitch, and so it was an automatic out or whatever, because she technically illegally left first base before she was allowed to, which I forgot was a rule because I've watched too much baseball in my life. But softball's being softball. Also, apparently there's a pitch clock now this year. It's optional whether you put it in your field or not. We did not. Baseball did.
Baseball had one.
Hold on, wait.
Hasn't
college baseball had one?
Yes,
they had one last year as well.
They had one last year, and basically what I was told, it wasn't heavily enforced, was my understanding and what I've heard. But now there's actually gonna be a clock. It didn't feel.
I definitely saw a couple violations last year, so those must have been pretty egregious. I wasn't paying attention to the actual.
I think it was like the Giannis taking 12 seconds at the free throw line kind of thing versus the strict version that exists now in pro baseball. It felt like that in the field. Granted, it's a little bit easier to go faster in softball compared to baseball because there's much less stuff happening in between pitches. But apparently they have it. And they've expanded the replays. I forgot what specifically they can expand replays for, but there's now more. There will be more things you could potentially review this year in softball.
Interesting. Good to know. Good to keep in the back pocket. Anyway, none of this, or all of this is all interesting. It's all great until you realize the buzzsaw teams that softball is playing in Clearwater, Florida next week. Just to go over the schedule one more time before we take a short break. Stanford up first on Thursday, then LSU, Minnesota, Northwestern, Tennessee, and then finally Oklahoma State. All of those games on the ESPN family of networks. There's a couple on ACC Network. There's a couple on ESPN Plus and ESPNU. I think that Stanford one is a 10 a.m. start on ESPNU actually on Thursday. And your first ACC on ACC violence of the year. So, Jake, you're our softball connoisseur. You're our long, big picture softball connoisseur. How is this going to go?
That's not
Ralph
a good start.
Wiggum
That's
meme,
not a good
start, is it?
Where he's
what he meant to say was not well.
Yeah, I don't want to be a downer, but between Stanford, LSU, Minnesota, Northwestern, Tennessee, and Oklahoma State, all of those teams are quite good and quite spooky. I'm going to be frank. If Tech can win one of those 6 of those games, I would be pretty pleased with that outcome. Maybe not pretty pleased, but I would call that about as close to a win as you can get. Like, just get one. All these teams are pretty darn good. I think Minnesota probably is the most gettable. You guys can, wise heads can differ, but I mean, there's a reason that these games are on ESPNU and the ACC network and whatnot. Those are, it's the real deal. The season's about to get here fast, and I say this knowing full well that Villanova profiles essentially identical, at least last year, profiled essentially identical to Georgia Tech. So it's a step up, and all these teams are quite good.
Let me read so D1 softball has their updated rankings already after the weekend. Let me at least read where these teams are ranked. Stanford is 13, LSU 9, Minnesota not ranked, but they received votes in the first rankings, I believe. Uh, Northwestern 24, Tennessee 3, Oklahoma State 4.
Hooray.
If they get even one of those, the RPI goes up significantly.
Yes.
So there is that. We have stats to play for, everyone.
Woohoo.
Think of the stats.
Think of the analytics. Won't someone think of the analytics? The poor nerds. At some point, someone will. So that's Clearwater. That's softball. We'll be back to talk about baseball after this short break.
Yes, as always, this podcast is brought to you by Section 103. Section 103 is the very best place to get Georgia Tech apparel. It is unique and unable to be procured anywhere else. Section103.com. Don't go for any Navy Haynes King NIL shirts. They're sold out because everyone loves supporting Haynes King, but they have a plethora of other options in all sorts of colors, including other NIL options, including Miles Kelly. I believe the Dante Smith stuff has gone to clearance, but as always, keep an eye out there for new things as they launch. Hopefully, maybe baseball and softball goes well. We see some stuff coming down the pipe, but that's me. Wishful thinking some of this into existence. In the meantime, feel free to check out Section 103 at Section 103 on Twitter, section103.com. And remember to use the code FTRS for 10% off.
Welcome back to Scions of the Southland for Monday, February 12th. Let's start talking about the 2024 baseball season. A very quick review of the 2023 baseball season. No NCAA tournament for Georgia Tech. They got eliminated early in the ACC tournament. Pitching coach Danny Burrell was canned after the year and replaced. We'll talk about that in a minute. I summarized this thusly. The season happened. Not a lot actually happened. I think it's just time to move on and see what 2024 brings. Jack, you're up first. Tell me about the parts of the team that are returning for 2024.
Not that much, in all honesty. I think your big notables are first baseman John Giesler, our mostly relief pitcher who was forced into a starting role at times, Ben King, Karsten Sabathia, Terry Busey, scary Terry Busey, who was just a great closer. Aiden Terry did a lot of work in relief as well. Or he's Aiden started relief. Both, probably.
I think
both,
he did a little bit of both.
Both.
Yeah, I think we had a lot of guys doing a little bit of both after last year. Cameron Hill, who while last year didn't exactly stand out, he had an exceptionally good winter ball stretch up in the Cape Cod lead. So we're really looking forward to how he's going to do. Logan McGuire was supposed to be one of our top pitchers last year. I think our Friday starter, if I'm not mistaken. I'm kind of mostly trying to remember what Ben King told me. But he's back from injury. He missed basically the entire season last year because of injury, and I know they're excited to see him back. And then our main catcher Tyler Minnick, who may not be our main catcher this year, but he at least got a lot of run last year. I want to make one note about Ben right before we get into the rest of it. He's going to wear number 21 this year, which is Jim Poole's number. That's a specific designation a player gets as a year. He's already one of the team captains with Giesler. But I want to read what Ben wrote on Twitter. Mr. Poole was the definition of a tech man. I'll never be able to express how meaningful his support was to me. It's an absolute honor to be chosen to wear his number, and I'll do my best to represent his legacy with honor on and off the diamond. I think that speaks to how just awesome of a dude Ben is beyond just his impact on the field. So in terms of just tech men being tech men, Ben King is working his way very strongly into being one of the best ones out there that Tech baseball has had for on and off field leadership, which is great to see. Beyond that, we have 26 new faces, and I default to Charles and Jake from here on out. What the hell to talk about?
Well, let me get us started just talking about the new pitching coach. That's Matt Taylor replacing Danny Burrell. From the Braves, he spent 3 seasons also at Georgia State immediately before coming to Tech. Much more of an emphasis on the control and the command side of things, it sounds like, from what we've heard, than focusing more on the power, right? So
Yeah.
we'll see how that translates to Tech. I know Tech traditionally has, especially the last 10 or so years, has struggled, right, with the finding the strike zone bit of pitching at times. And so we're just going to have to, Jake, I can see you laughing about that one. I, it'll be an interesting change. I think it's a change for the better. I think more control, more command is good. And I think that's some of the times that we saw Tech at its best, right? That 2018 team, that 2019 team, those guys were exceptional at putting the baseball where they wanted it to be. And that's why they succeeded a whole lot. Maybe they weren't throwing gas the whole time, but they were putting pitches in the right spot and making guys miss. And so a return to the more traditional format of pitching, I think, will be interesting. But I want to turn it over to Charles and Jake to talk about these transfers and freshmen. One of you pick a place to start because this list is massive.
Yeah, I'll take a stab at this first. I think it's important to keep in mind that baseball is interesting in that you do get a decent amount of opportunity to play different guys between pitchers and fielders and playing a decent number of games. So, just because we don't mention somebody here doesn't mean they won't play at all. But it's also just kind of trying to read the tea leaves a little bit. Names that pop out to me: Mike Bichetti from Fairfield is first listed for us, but I think most people might say, Fairfield. They've had a pretty solid baseball program the last couple of years. Definitely we've used the phrase before applying transfers down in volleyball and softball, like, hey, like we're trusting Nebraska or Texas's talent ID. In this case, I'm trusting Fairfield's talent development. I think they're a pretty solid program. But the other two, at least in terms of like lineup contributions, infielder Peyton Green from NC State, great program up there. Elliot Avett been, truly tremendous. They were in Omaha, 2 years ago, not that long ago. And Matthew Ellis, catcher from Indiana. Big Ten hasn't really been seen quite as on the same tier as the ACC or SEC, Pac-12, Big 12 the last couple of years. But Indiana was in a super regional at Kentucky, if not that, then close to it, just last year. And you're trusting, some of that'll carry over. But in terms of guys coming in with experience, I really like those three, at least off the top of my head.
Charles,
And
any
there's
other names that stick out to you?
no, I think Jake pretty much hit all the highlights there as far as transfers go. If we transition here to freshmen, James Ramsey signed the 19th ranked incoming freshman class according to D1 Baseball. And really the big centerpiece of that class is going to be outfielder Drew Burress. He was the 6th ranked Prep Baseball Report prospect who decided to not leave with the draft. He decided to stay at Tech. And so because of that, we're going to have him for the next few years. And I'm sure we'll speak more about him later. The other really kind of big names with this freshman class is Tate McKee, who has a running 94, 95 fastball. Then we have Ryan Jaros and Carson Curse, who quite honestly could be day one starters in the lineup and definitely mix in as far as the infield, behind Bichetti. So yeah, I think Burris and Jaros will for sure get honestly a lot of playing time this year. I think they're going to be maybe not household names on a national scale, but I think Tech fans will will come to know them very well, and you should expect to see them a lot in the lineup.
One more note while we're talking about the freshman here, I noticed that Michal Kavala is listed as being from Czechia, the modern name for the Czech Republic.
Yep.
That's awesome. Like, do we have any more information on the story there?
I put that in here. He was the number one rated pitcher or player out of Europe. Uh, for I think it was number one pitcher out of Europe. And so yeah, we have a Chechen on the team. So
A Czech.
a Czech. That's right. Sorry. Yeah, I should.
It, because Swim Club influences everything, I'm going to make an allusion here. We've actually gotten a couple of really interesting, stories of kids who've come along, either just from people I interacted with in school or folks that actually wound up swimming for that team. It's interesting to hear kind of just the chatter about Tech as a destination name brand type place, be it engineering, sports, Atlanta, whatever, even outside of your traditional Georgia Tech recruiting grounds, if you will, like England, France, India, China, Korea, those kind of classic spots. Whether it's Spaniards or Czechs, it seems like Georgia Tech really really gets out there, even outside of the core Georgia plus some out of states with some key ties.
So I'm looking at this bio that's listed on the website on Tech's website. He was with the P27 Academy. He's played some perfect games before, but he pitched in the World Baseball Classic last year. He had 4 scoreless in the winner go home game against Germany. So he's played against, obviously European baseball's not.
He's a full bird Czech international, is what you're saying.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. Well, okay. Yeah, basically, yeah. There's a lot of grandparents and stuff that are used as excuses to play for non-US based teams in the World Baseball Classic, a la Freddie Freeman playing for Canada. So not everyone is directly like born and bred in said country they play for, but yeah, though he is the deservedly Czech. He's listed, his hometown is listed as the Czech Republic on the team website. So for all intents and purposes, he will be the Chechen the Czech on the team. I don't know why I keep saying that.
Let's talk a little bit about what we think this lineup is going to break down as. And the way that I wanted to structure this is I wanted to go around the room and have people name a breakout star and a season make or break performer. Jake, I'm going to go to you first. Who is your breakout star for this year? This guy that you think he's going to be unreal. We're so hyped for him. We're so hyped to have him. He's going to be our ace in the hole, so to speak.
Yeah, this is a really normie opinion, but I think that's going to be Karsten Sabathia. I say this mostly off of vibes. I saw him get a couple at bats last year. Really liked what I saw. Pretty pure swing. Obviously, most people who follow baseball know that he is of the lineage of CC Sabathia, noted Yankees pitcher. I don't know. This is partially a vibes pick. I was trying to go for someone that wasn't necessarily coming in with a lot of transfer time or a lot of hype, but Karsten was a good get. I'm excited to see what he could potentially do.
Charles, who do you have as your breakout star for 24?
Kind of going in the opposite direction here. Someone who's got quite a bit of hype coming into the season is the true freshman Drew Burress. I mean, as I said, he was the 6th ranked recruit. He didn't go in the draft, and you could really make the argument that he's the most talented player on the roster right now. You should look for him to lead off or play in the 3-hole. He's 5'9", 185, super great arm, super quick bat speed, has a mature approach at the plate. I think this is somebody who very quickly is going to stand out. And I don't know. I think this is somebody that Tech fans should really be high on. I think as far as the field and at the plate, I think he's going to really kind of be our main star this year.
He's a 10 on perfect game too. So that's a very big pedigree. Those guys generally know what they're doing. Let's move over to the make or break performer in the lineup. Charles, I want to go over to you first. Who does the season really hinge on? Whose success does the season really hinge on in terms of the lineup? for you?
As far as the season hinging on this guy, I think it's going to be our, I guess, our top pitcher, Ben King. He had this team best ERA of 3.73 last year. Um, as what Jack said earlier, he's going to be he's the honorary Jim Pool player, and in a lineup that has just question marks all over the place as far as our pitching goes, it's really going to be a necessity that we have just an anchor in the bullpen who's going to be able to perhaps dig some of our starters out of some tough situations. And I really think if Ben is able to do that, then we're going to win a lot more games this year. I mean, that's not to say that our starting pitching is going to be terrible, but there's just a lot of question marks there with Terry Busey and Cameron Hill. Had a great Cape Cod winner, but just as kind of an insurance plan, I think having been in the bullpen is going to be fantastic for us.
Jake, over to you. Between the lineup, the rotation, and the bullpen, who is your season hinging make or break performer?
Yeah, we already touched on some of the transfers. I know that Peyton Green kind of came to mind there. Defense, batting experience, a good get, but I really think it comes down to getting reliable starting pitching. It's something that Georgia Tech, quite frankly, outside of Connor Thomas and I guess Xavier Curry too, in the almost decade now that I've been following this team. I saw that reaction, Akshay. That applies to you too. You got to accept it. I think coming back around to having some reliable starting pitching it is going to be big, and it's going to be make or break taking Terry Busey out of that effective closer role and into the starting lineup. Presumably, whether that's eventually settles out to be, setting a statement on not taxing your bullpen early in a series, or slamming a door on Saturday to get a series win, winds up being, I think, taking a proven closer commodity out of the bullpen. You need that to be reliable in terms of on the mound, and it's really not something outside of Connor that we've really truly had okay, I'm feeling good because of what's going on right now in the starting pitching. It's been tough, but
All right, so let's talk about the schedule. It's I don't know. I think when we look this schedule over at the beginning of the year, or when this came out, excuse me, we were, I don't know, like other than the ACC games, we're just kind of, I think this has been the second year in a row where the schedule has just kind of been, like what are we really kind of doing here? Right. So I'm making sure that I have it pulled up before I say anything concrete, but you're talking about out of conference opponents like Radford. Obviously, you have Georgia Southern, you have Cornell that'll come here, the annual Clean Old Fashioned Hate Series. But some of these other opponents in that same bucket, Northeastern, Youngstown State, like Kennesaw, we always play. Presbyterian is a frequent appearer, but like not a lot of top level teams outside of your usual ACC play, right? Like this is not the strength on strength kind of schedule that I think we saw in previous years, probably 2020 or prior from this program. Wouldn't you say, Jake?
I mean, I don't know. I really don't think that you can get too far from the best teams in the ACC. I think last year was interesting in that, some of those traditional powers like a Florida State, like a Louisville, weren't necessarily at the top of their game. But I mean, kind of thinking about it from bottom up, you're closing the regular season, and this could be a bubble Georgia Tech type team against. Yes, they did not have an awesome first year down there last year, but going on the road to Tallahassee, I gotta believe at least somewhat with what he's done at Notre Dame and the history of Florida State that there's going to be something there. Duke, they've really built their program back up the last couple of years. Of course, Auburn is always on midweek. Clemson, Eric Bakich, great program up there. Those are your last three series. You've got Miami, with a new coach. So maybe a bit of an unknown there, but a historic powerhouse. You've got Virginia, who's been a regular in Omaha. You've got Virginia Tech, who a bit of a down year last year, but 2 years ago we're in a super regional. I almost said super sectional. Whoops. You know, yeah, maybe Pitt, Boston College with a new coach. Maybe you find some wins there, but you really can't count out anyone in the ACC. I know that it makes me sound like a conference homer, but I mean, you go through the non-con slate in which you get weekends with Radford, Youngstown State, and UGA, of course, the home or home away neutral type situation. But after that, I mean, it's a gauntlet at every single one of those series, except for maybe Radford, Cornell, Youngstown State is eminently losable, and that's kind of terrifying. It's a tough slate.
I found one trivia question, which is fun to me. I remember Ben bringing this up in our interview, but I used Jake's tool for this, so I finally used it properly. Do y'all know the last time we played at Florida State for a series?
2019.
Before?
No, I was gonna say it's further back. I don't think we played them down there since.
No, we played Miami down there that year, I think.
No, we played Miami on the road every other year because the Coastal still exists. It's been at least what, 6 years, Jack?
Yes, at least 6 years. Charles, if you know, chime in too. Yeah, it has been. We had a 3-game series. We got swept pretty badly, but we played it in 2016. March of 2016 was the last time we played there. I remember Ben saying, it's like, hey, I've never played here before. I'm excited to go play in Tallahassee. I was like, oh, you haven't played in Tallahassee yet? You've been here for ages. And you never played in Tallahassee because it was literally 2015.
I think we were supposed to get them in 2020 because that makes sense. I think they just wiped the slate clean because if you think about it, 2016, boop, and then 20.
There was a 3-season gap. We played them at home in 2018 and didn't play them again until 2021.
Yeah, because that's about how often you catch the Atlantic teams.
The scheduling model is so dumb. At some point, they'll just go to
only one more year of it. Only one more year.
I was going to say you get 4 more, or you get 4 Atlantic weekends in baseball, unlike football used to be. That was even more wild. 14 years or 12 years between Tallahassee road trips, whatever that was.
Starting next year, you can get Gulf of Mexico and Pacific weekends too.
Dallas is not on the Gulf of Mexico, sir.
Come on. It was a good joke. It was a good joke.
Don't they not have baseball either?
Right? For that.
Wait, does that even
think they do?
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah,
unbelievable. It's just
ruining my rest for the Akshay,
No,
just no quarter.
Just no respect for the quality of humor on this program. Unbelievable. Okay, so it's not as bad of a schedule as maybe I thought. I think the non-conference to me is still a little uninspiring, but I think for the most part it's front-loaded, right? Especially a very odd 4-game set versus Youngstown State in the middle or the beginning of March, excuse me. So interesting all around there. Gentlemen, I want to ask you this final question before we wrap up here. If you are a out-of-state Tech fan and you are only able to come to campus twice during the spring for a weekend series, which 2 weekend baseball series would you recommend that fan go to? You can space them however you want. You could do 2 weeks you could do 2 weeks consecutively. You could do 2 separately. Be creative.
I mean, there's not an obvious one that stands out to me. I don't really have, as you said earlier, just based on the vibes was one of your picks. I'm going to say, I think you should be here for the ACC opener against North Carolina State. It's not even because I think we're going to win that. I think I would be really impressed, in this preseason platform saying like, hey, Georgia Tech's going to take 2 of 3 against North Carolina State because, quite frankly, that's a really good team that has the potential to make a really deep playoff run this year, but it is also the ACC opener. So, I think I saw something the other day, some other random podcast talking about having rivalry week at the beginning of the year, because at that point, both fan bases are still like really into the season and still like really hype about and hopeful about what the year could be. And so I think I'm kind of putting that in this format. Our non-con is kind of not great. I think we'll probably be, probably maybe a little full of ourselves because we should have a lot of wins in our non-conference going into the ACC conference play. And so I think, maybe a confident team and the ACC opener against a team that could be really great or a team that could be middle of the pack. So I would say you should be there for the North Carolina State series.
Yeah, I want to expound on that just a little bit, just because it profiles so similarly to what we saw last year. A team that stacked up wins and then kind of ran into a bit of a buzzsaw. I think on the whole, I really thought about getting cute with it and saying that you should make the drive up to Clemson for May 3rd, 4th, and 5th. That sounds like an awesome road trip. I'm sure that now that I've seen that, I may be considering that, but we'll see. But I think in terms of a second home weekend, I think Miami, April 26th, 27th, 28th, Georgia Tech, by the end of April, we're going to know a lot more about Georgia Tech. I think it's a team that really has quite a bit of potential. A lot of wish casting that you could do based on some of the changes that were made. And I think Miami, historically a pretty powerhouse of a program, maybe a team looking to define itself as well. I think by April they should be fully settled in. I think that game, that series, if things kind of go how both fan bases prognosticate, could very much decide or have some sort of stake in the Coastal. I also think that Miami generally has a little more juice than the Duke series, which is what draws me away from the home finale and towards that Miami weekend. Oh, and we'll also still have students on campus. So hopefully, if the team's playing well, that should make for a good atmosphere as well. A 6 p.m. Friday night game against Miami, if both of those teams are in the mix, that has the making for a really fun atmosphere, I think.
Box office style game right there. Mm-hmm. Jack, anything to add on these two selections of the North Carolina State series and the Miami series?
In terms of the baseball, literally nothing. This is where my brain has the shortfall. I think I'll just make one note on the what series? The Virginia Tech series. Virginia Tech, I believe that they're good at baseball, right? They're one of them really good teams. Okay, so you get good baseball.
Not every year, but they're a pretty solid program.
Okay, gotcha. With the massive caveat that this is Masters weekend, this is also the weekend of the spring game. So, if you wanted to really, really do everything, I believe there's softball home that weekend as well. So you could do do a 1-2-3 punch of softball, baseball, and football all on the same weekend on campus. So there's that option. There is that option if you just want to go all out for a weekend. Friday games at 6, Saturday games at 4, out of the way of the spring game, and then the Sunday games at 1.
I've got one more note on the schedule. For those that love pain and heart attack games, on the road at at Auburn, April 16th. That'll be on SEC Network for those who cannot make it to Auburn. At home on ACC Network, May 7th. Those games are always extremely chaotic. I think it helps having midweek pitching type situations in both of those. Charles noted that the non-con is kind of interesting, really, since UGA. I mean, between UGA and Auburn, that used to be 5 of the midweeks right there. Ever since that's gone to a weekend, these have been your marquee weekday games, and I don't know, this year doesn't seem like it'll be any different. So keep an eye on April 16th and May 7th.
I got to make a note on the colors. We play Auburn April 16th, then we play Virginia next. I'm ignoring this Kennesaw State game in between. Then we play Miami, and then we play Clemson, and then we play Auburn again. There's just so much orange that's going to be on our television screens all in a row. And the Kennesaw State uniforms, if they wear their mustard yellow, it's the eye source, not the eye source, just the brightness stays the same. So we're going to face a lot of orange this year. And Virginia Tech's before that too, so like it's already it's in the same palette. There's your uniform segment.
To that point, Youngstown State, Northeastern, or let me get this in order. Georgia, Northeastern, and Youngstown State, all red and black teams in order.
Yes.
Between March 1st and March 10th. Oh, and then NC State, and then the weekend after that. So
and what's before that? Before Georgia State. is Cornell. So who are literally
So
called the
much
Big Red,
red.
literally called the
It
Big Red.
hurts.
You've just listed half the
Burns.
colors. I don't know if this can still be applicable, but
We're ignoring
I'll
midweek. We're
leave
just
y'all to
ignoring
it.
midweek. If it's a midweek game that doesn't apply, it doesn't apply.
Fair.
Okay, I think we've just about exhausted all of our baseball preview content. Like we said at the start of the episode, that opening weekend is this weekend. They'll start on at 4 p.m. on Friday, February 16th versus Radford. Saturday's first pitch is at 2 p.m. and then Sunday is at 1. All games on ACC Network Extra. Gentlemen, as we wrap up here, any news and notes from around the flats that we still need to go over?
Yeah, I've got some. I'll take a hack at some of these. You guys can feel free to jump in wherever. Tennis, no team ranking updates. For whatever reason, they don't do team rankings this week. But the men are making their presence known. They've got 4 ranked singles players. That's Andres Martin at 14, Keshav Chopra at 82, Gabriel Brancatelli at 98, and Richard Biagiotti at 121. Marcus McDaniel and Keshav Chopra figure in at number 22 doubles. If things start to break Marcus's way, he can break that singles rotation there as well.
Mhm.
Interestingly, we've long talked about the women as being, steady Eddies. They've really only got Carol Lee in the rankings, and she's at number 53. The men, not guaranteeing anything here, but the fact that they've got 4 and potentially a 5th has historically been ranked in Marcus McDaniel. That seems to figure pretty well as we enter the thick of the season there.
Good stuff. Jack, do you have something on swim and dive?
Sure, they were at Auburn. Both swim and dive were there. It's the first chance invitational, unlike all the last chance stuff we get late in the season. Only big things here. I don't think we had any cuts or anything like that. Kaya Smith for the women won the 100 fly. Lily Burke got third in the 100 free. Caroline Papp got second. Uh, but beyond that, nothing too huge. We didn't really win anything. So our diving wise, Alex Scott was fourth. Luke Dodson was sixth. They are swimming in a week at ACC championships. So we'll see if that's good. That's the meet they're tapering for, anyways. So that's where the meat of the boat is going to be.
I do want to say I think that they just simply rebranded it from a last chance meet to a first chance meet.
Okay.
Typically, last chance is like the last meet before ACC championships, and it's still that's the big one to look at coming up in a week or so here, Jack.
Yeah. It starts on Monday. Track and field wise on the individual sports, we had Mac Bloodworth got second in the 800 at the Clemson Tiger Paw Invite. Or we're back to Clemson and back to Vanderbilt once again, as we always do. That was the only main name there for the guys. Nothing else in terms of big results on the women's side. Eric Singleton did participate in a race. So we had, it's like we had mentioned at one point, I think when we had that practice squad quarterback play golf, we now got Eric Singleton running track officially for Tech. So that's fun to see. And then yeah, that was all that I noted from there.
Yeah, Eric, I think he got the 200 and the 800, but I cannot really recall off the top of my head there. It was on Instagram that I ran into that. In terms of club sports, hockey did have 2 to close out the year. They closed Friday the 9th against the University of Alabama Huntsville. They lost 4-7 at the Atlanta Ice Forum. They also came back with a win to close the year against the same team at the same place. 5-4. They finished 5-15-2-1 on the year. So not quite what we've seen from them in the past, but they went out with a win. That's good. Lacrosse did play 2 games, both against ranked teams, both at home. Home opener Friday was 16-11 win versus number 25 Auburn. There was a box score posted. Brooks Barrow had 4 goals on 6 shots, just froze 4 on 8. Matt Seifert 3 on 4 himself. Peter Zagrobelny, he had 11 goals allowed on 31 shots, so 20 saves in the difference there. Sunday, the 11th, they beat number 20 Colorado 15-7. I think I got those rankings right. So
Good stuff. Good ranked wins there for, last check, it was the number 4 club lacrosse team in the nation. Hopefully that's gone higher in the interim. Gentlemen, I think that about wraps it up for us this week. Thank you, Mr. Purdy and Mr. Grant, as always. And thank you, Charles, for joining us today. Charles, where can the people find your work, what you're up to?
So I'm primarily on Instagram at C Gilley Photos, but you know what? I'll be in Atlanta this Friday for the home baseball opener. So if you see a redheaded fellow with a beard carrying a really big lens, please come say hi.
Awesome. Sounds great. Mr. Grant, take us out.
Yes, as always, you can find us on FromTheRumbleSeat.com. We publish articles there. You can find the latest and the greatest, all of Tech's various sports there. You can email us with your ideas, with your feedback at FromTheRumbleSeat@gmail.com. Please take the time to let us know what you'd like to hear us cover if there's anything out there. In the meantime, also feel free to rate, review on Apple and anywhere you find podcasts. It does really help us out. And tell your friends. Word of mouth really does matter. In the meantime, you can find us on Twitter at FTRS Blog. I'm at JakeGrant98. Jack is at Jack Nicholas. You can find Section 103 at Section 103 and Section103.com. And you can find us on Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube at From the Rumble Seat. As always, it's been a pleasure. Good night, good luck, and go Jackets.